Ever feel like there's got to be more to knowledge than just like facts and figures, like some deeper, well, spiritual insight waiting to be unlocked?
Yeah.
And not just for us, but for the kids in our lives too. I think that's something a lot of parents and educators are seeking these days.
It is a powerful yearning, for sure.
Yeah.
That desire to nurture a kind of whole person growth, both in ourselves and the younger generation.
And that's where Rudolf Steiner comes in, right?
Yeah.
This guy wasn't just some like armchair philosopher.
Right.
He founded Waldorf schools, wrote tons about spiritual development, even designed buildings, all focused on this idea of humans growing in a truly holistic way.
What's fascinating is how he saw all these areas as connected, you know?
Yeah.
Philosophy, education, architecture, all contributing to a deeper understanding of what it means to be human and our place in the cosmos.
So, for this deep dive, we're tackling Steiner's ideas on something he calls supersensible knowledge.
Okay.
Specifically, 3 stages he outlines.
Yeah.
Imaginative, inspired,
Okay.
and intuitive cognition. We're drawing from How to Know Higher Worlds and a few other sources to help you grasp how these stages can help us access those deeper insights.
Supersensible knowledge might sound a bit out there, but bear with us.
Yeah.
Steiner is talking about knowledge that goes beyond our 5 senses, beyond the purely material world.
Okay.
And he believes we all have the capacity to develop these ways of knowing.
Okay, so supersensible basically means we're tapping into something beyond our usual senses.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
And how does this all tie into the work of Cairos clan?
Well, Cairos clan is all about supporting self-discovery and personal growth, right? Well, Steiner's ideas offer a really interesting framework for understanding how that growth happens, particularly when it comes to spiritual understanding.
So it's like a roadmap for inner development.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And it all starts with the first stage, imaginative cognition.
Okay.
Steiner saw this as the foundation, the starting point for our journey into these deeper realms of knowing.
All right, let's unpack this imaginative cognition thing.
Okay.
What exactly is it, and how do we even access it?
Steiner believed that imaginative cognition is something we cultivate through focused inner work. It might sound complex, but children actually do it naturally all the time.
Hold on, are you saying kids are already tapping into this supersensible knowledge stuff?
Yes.
How?
Think about how young children learn.
Yeah.
It's all about imitation, absorbing the world around them through mimicry and play. They're not bogged down by abstract concepts yet. They experience the world through vivid images and actions.
So, like my niece, who's constantly pretending to be a cat or a dinosaur,
Yes.
that's imaginative cognition in action.
Precisely.
Wow.
And this is a key principle in Waldorf education, which Steiner founded. They put a huge emphasis on arts, storytelling, creating a learning environment that's rich in sensory experiences, especially in those early years.
Instead of just drilling kids with flashcards and quizzes, they're letting them play and use their imaginations.
Exactly.
It does seem like a more natural way to learn.
Exactly. And they also tend to delay formal teaching of things like reading and writing. Steiner felt that pushing kids into abstract intellectual activities too early could actually hinder their development.
That's an interesting approach.
Yeah.
But wouldn't some people argue that early literacy is, super important for kids?
Steiner would likely say that reading especially should be introduced gradually.
Okay.
Give those imaginative capacities time to fully blossom first.
Yeah.
It's about honoring the natural stages of development.
Okay, so no pressure to turn toddlers into mini Einsteins.
Right.
Give them time to just be kids and explore the world through their imaginations.
Yeah.
I can see how that would help them build a strong foundation for later learning.
Absolutely. And another key aspect here is the role of adults.
Okay.
Children are naturally drawn to imitate those they trust and respect.
Yeah.
So teachers, parents, we become these living examples, embodying the values and behaviors that children then absorb.
So we got to walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Precisely.
Lead by example.
Precisely. And Steiner contrasted this approach with what he called visual instruction.
Okay.
Where learning is primarily focused on visual presentation of facts and information, like in textbooks.
Okay.
He felt that could lead to a more passive, detached way of learning.
Whereas nurturing the imagination helps them really connect with the world around them in a more active way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Steiner believed true education wasn't about stuffing children with facts. It's about awakening their inner capacities, nurturing their whole being. And that begins with fostering a vibrant imagination.
Right.
And this focus on imagination actually ties beautifully into how Steiner viewed our relationship with nature.
Yeah.
He felt that presenting nature in a purely objective scientific way wasn't right for younger children.
So ditch the textbook diagrams of a flower's anatomy and get kids out into the garden. Is that the idea?
That's the spirit of it.
Okay.
He advocated for weaving nature into stories, fables, artistic activities, connecting it to human experiences.
So instead of just labeling parts, you might ask a kid to imagine what it's like to be that flower, swaying in the wind or feeling the sun on its petals.
Exactly. Yeah. Foster a sense of reverence and connection with the natural world, not just dissect it intellectually. It lays a foundation for the next stage of supersensible knowledge, which Steiner calls inspired cognition.
Okay, on to inspired cognition.
Right.
What's that about?
It builds upon that foundation of imagination. It takes it further. It's about allowing insights to arise from a deeper level of the soul. A kind of intuitive knowing that's beyond the purely rational mind.
So not just logic, but almost like a gut feeling.
Yes.
But on a more profound level.
You're getting it.
Wow.
It's like a wellspring of wisdom emerging from within.
Okay.
And Steiner links this stage to around age 9 or 10.
Okay.
When children go through what he calls the eye awakening.
Why that age in particular?
He observed that around then, kids start to separate more from their environment, develop a stronger sense of individuality, and become capable of more objective observation.
So they're not just mimicking anymore, but starting to see themselves as separate individuals.
Precisely.
Right.
And this shift, Steiner argues, makes them ready for a different kind of learning.
Okay.
They can handle more objective knowledge, but it still needs to be presented in a way that speaks to their souls, not just their intellects.
So how would we adapt our approach to teaching or parenting as kids hit this stage?
Steiner believed education should adapt.
Okay.
For example, they're ready for more objective natural science, but still presented with an artistic living approach.
So maybe instead of a dry lecture on photosynthesis, you'd have them act out the process.
Exactly.
Becoming the plant, taking in sunlight and all that.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
And Steiner loved to use real-life stories to illustrate his points.
Okay.
He often talks about the writer Jean-Paul, who described this vivid memory of his own eye awakening.
What happened?
Jean-Paul was standing in his parents' courtyard and suddenly had this profound realization of his own existence, his own ire. He felt like he was looking through a veil into the Holy of Holies within himself.
Wow, that's quite an image.
Yeah.
It sounds like he suddenly became aware of himself as a separate being.
Yes.
Not just part of the environment.
Exactly. And for Steiner, this anecdote highlights how important it is to understand and respect this stage in a child's development. You can't force it, but you can create the conditions for it to occur naturally.
So by understanding these stages, we can better support kids as they go through these pretty massive inner shifts.
That's the takeaway.
Yeah.
Meet them where they are developmentally and provide the right experiences to foster growth. It's like giving them the keys to unlock their own potential.
All this talk about unlocking potential, it really aligns with what Cairos Clan is all about, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about empowering people, especially young people, to connect with their own inner wisdom. And to do that, we need to understand these stages of development. Starting with imagination and moving towards inspired cognition. But the journey doesn't stop there. Steiner takes it even further with the third stage, intuitive cognition.
All right, let's dive into that. Intuitive cognition, what's that all about?
Yeah.
So we've journeyed through imaginative cognition, where kids learn through mimicry and play. And then inspired cognition, where they start to tap into a deeper wellspring of inner knowing. Now onto this third stage, intuitive cognition. What did Steiner say about that?
Well, think of intuitive cognition as the peak of this journey. It's about direct perception of spiritual realities, going beyond conceptual thinking, beyond the limits of the intellect. It's that kind of knowing that mystics and spiritual masters often talk about.
It almost sounds like we're transcending our everyday minds and tapping into a higher consciousness.
Yes.
Is that what Steiner was getting at?
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And he saw this as the ultimate aim of human development.
Right.
Not just for a select few, but as a potential within everyone.
Wow.
By understanding these stages of knowing, we can actually create the conditions for intuitive cognition to emerge.
So it's not about just passively waiting for some kind of mystical experience to happen.
Right.
We can actually cultivate this capacity within ourselves.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And this is where things get really fascinating when we connect it back to child development.
Okay.
Steiner linked intuitive cognition to the development of what he called the astral body, which he associated with puberty.
Okay. I've heard the term astral body thrown around in different spiritual circles, but I'm not really sure what it means.
Sure.
Could you explain that a bit more?
For those unfamiliar with the term in Steiner's framework, the astral body is basically a subtle energy body that carries our emotions, desires, and deeper soul experiences.
Okay.
He saw its development as closely tied to the process of individualization that happens around puberty.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Puberty is such a time of intense change.
Right.
Both physically and emotionally. It's like a whole new sense of self is emerging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Steiner pointed out that with the emergence of this astral body comes a deep need for inner freedom.
Right.
It's that urge to break free from the constraints of authority and forge your own path, which we often see in teenagers.
So it's like they're moving from that stage of needing constant guidance to a place where they're really searching for their own inner compass.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's why Steiner emphasized the importance of fostering a sense of inner freedom in education, especially for adolescents.
Right.
He even said the most important thing is the experience of freedom.
Those are powerful words.
Yeah.
But how do you actually teach freedom?
Right.
It's not like a subject you could just put on a syllabus.
And that was exactly Steiner's point.
Okay.
He felt that true freedom couldn't be imposed or taught directly.
Right.
It had to be experienced and cultivated from within. The role of teachers and parents then becomes about creating the conditions for this inner freedom to blossom, giving them space for exploration, self-discovery, and critical thinking.
So instead of dictating what they should think or believe, we're encouraging them to question, explore, and find their own truths.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this ties directly back to the idea of supersensible knowledge. It's about developing our own faculties, our own inner capacities for knowing. Not just blindly accepting dogma or external authority.
This all feels very aligned with what Cairos clan is all about.
Absolutely. It's about empowering individuals to connect with their own inner wisdom, to unlock their potential for growth and self-realization. And Steiner's framework offers such a rich and insightful way to understand how that process unfolds.
So for our listeners out there, whether they're a parent, educator, or just someone interested in personal growth, what are some key takeaways from Steiner's ideas?
Well, he gives us a really valuable roadmap for understanding the different stages children go through, offering age-appropriate ways to engage and nurture their development.
It's like a guidebook for supporting the whole child.
Exactly.
Not just their intellectual growth, but also their emotional, social, and spiritual development.
Absolutely. And remember, this isn't just for Waldorf schools. These principles apply broadly, whether you're homeschooling, teaching in a traditional classroom, or raising your own children. Understanding these stages can help create a more nurturing and supportive environment.
It's about fostering that love of learning. A sense of wonder and a deep respect for the child's individuality.
And just as importantly, this knowledge is for our own growth, too. As we cultivate these capacities within ourselves, we become more insightful parents, more compassionate educators, and more aware human beings. It's a journey we take together.
It really is. And one of the practical ideas that Steiner suggested for incorporating these principles was something called the block period. What is that exactly?
He advocated for teaching a particular subject intensively for several weeks. It allows for a deeper immersion and a more holistic understanding compared to just skimming the surface of multiple subjects.
So kind of like a mini deep dive into a specific topic.
You got it.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into Steiner's ideas.
Yes, it has.
We've explored his 3 stages of supersensible knowledge: imaginative, inspired, and intuitive cognition, and how they connect to child development, education, and even Cairos clan's mission.
Absolutely.
We've seen how these stages provide a roadmap for understanding and nurturing holistic growth.
Yes.
Both in ourselves and in the children in our lives.
Right.
And what's truly inspiring is that this potential for supersensible knowing exists in everyone. It's like we're all on this journey of unfolding our potential.
Yeah.
And by understanding these stages,
right,
we can create the conditions for that unfolding to happen more consciously and intentionally.
Absolutely. And Steiner believed that humanity needs a total revamp of how we understand human nature. So here's a thought to ponder.
Okay.
How might that shift in perspective impact education as a whole?
Wow.
How might it transform our approach to raising children, to teaching, to learning, to living?
It's a question worth reflecting on. And for our listener, if you're feeling inspired to explore these ideas further, we encourage you to visit www.cairosclan.com for resources, updates, and more exploration of Steiner's work within the context of Cairos Clan's mission.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.